The whispers started like a summer storm over the Sierra Nevada, gathering force until they drowned out the cicadas. Disgrace. They hissed from behind calloused hands at the mercado, where tomatoes bled red onto scarred wooden stalls. Lila Vargas had always known the word was waiting for her, coiled in the dusty air of this Andalusian village like a serpent in the olive groves. But when it struck, it came from the mouth of the one person whose venom cut deepest, her own mother. "You're no daughter of mine," Rosa Vargas spat, her voice cracking like parched earth under the relentless Spanish sun, as she hurled the faded family Bible across the terracotta kitchen floor. It landed at Lila's feet, pages splayed open to verses of fire and brimstone, the gold-embossed cross on the cover glinting mockingly. Lila stood frozen in the doorway, the scent of simmering gazpacho still clinging to her clothes from the morning's work, her heart pounding as if it might shatter the clay tiles beneath her. It was a Tuesday in late July, the kind of day when the heat pressed down on Almeria like a judgment from above, turning the whitewashed walls of the village into mirrors of unrelenting light. Lila had come home early from the vineyard, her skin sticky with sweat and the faint tang of ripening grapes, hoping to steal a quiet moment before the evening's family dinner. But secrets have a way of ripening too, bursting forth at the worst possible hour. Her mother had found the letters, tucked away in the lining of Lila's old leather satchel. Words scrawled in hurried ink from across the ocean, from a woman named Jordan whose touch still lingered like sea salt on Lila's skin. Rosa's eyes, once soft with the lullabies of Lila's childhood, now burned with a fury forged in the crucibles of Catholic guilt and small-town scorn. "How could you? After everything, your father's grave barely cold, and you bring this filth into our home." She clutched her rosary beads, knuckles whitening, as if the string of pearls could ward off the sin she saw etched into her daughter's face. Lila, at 28, with her mother's dark curls framing a face that had always been too expressive for her own good. Eyes like polished onyx, lips that curved into defiant smiles, felt the ground shift beneath her. She had hidden it for years, this quiet truth that bloomed in her chest like wild jasmine, fierce and unapologetic. Loving women wasn't a choice, it was the rhythm of her breath, the pull of the tide she felt in her bones. But Almeria didn't bend for such truths. Nestled in the rugged foothills of West Spain, where the Mediterranean whispered promises of escape to the east and the arid plains stretched into forgotten horizons, the village clung to its rhythms like a miser to coins. Goats bleated from rocky perches, old men gathered at the plaza's lone café to debate bullfights and soccer scores over glasses of Tinto de Verano, and women like Rosa kept the hearts burning with stories of honor and piety. Lila's family had tilled these vineyards for generations, their names synonymous with the robust reds that shipped to distant ports. To be the Vargas daughter who loved differently was to invite the rot, they said. The kind that spread from gossip to isolation, from sidelong glances to slammed doors. Lila knelt to gather the scattered pages, her fingers trembling as she smoothed the creases. Jordan's handwriting was elegant, looping like vines. "I miss the way your laugh echoes off the cliffs, mi amor. Come back to me in Barcelona." They had met 2 summers ago, during Lila's brief escape to the city, where the Ramblas pulsed with anonymity and the air hummed with possibility. Jordan, an American artist with sun-freckled shoulders and a sketchbook always at the ready, had drawn Lila out of her shell, their nights spent wandering the Gothic quarter under strings of fairy lights, sharing stories of dreams deferred. It was love, raw and revelatory, but Barcelona was a world away. A glittering mirage that evaporated under Almeria's glare. "I didn't choose this, Mama," Lila whispered, her voice barely rising above the sizzle of the cooling stove. "It's who I am. And it's beautiful." The words hung there, fragile as spider silk, but Rosa recoiled as if slapped. "Beautiful? You'll burn for it, Nina. And you'll drag us all down with you." She stormed out, the screen door banging like a gavel, leaving Lila alone with the ghosts of her courage. By evening the village knew. Rosa, in her grief and rage, had unburdened herself to Father Miguel at the evening mass, and from the confessional, it seeped into the pews, then the streets. Lila's sister, Evangeline, arrived home just as the sun dipped below the Sierra, her heels clicking urgently on the path from the bus stop. At 32, Evangeline was the family's anchor, the one who had stayed after their father's heart attack 2 years prior, commuting to the coastal offices of a boutique winery consultancy in Malaga. Tall and composed, With her hair pulled into a severe bun that accentuated her high cheekbones and the faint worry lines etching her forehead, she carried the weight of expectation like a second skin. She worked under Miriam Hale, the firm's enigmatic director, a woman whose reputation preceded her like a desert wind, brilliant, unyielding, and whispered to be as American as the jazz record she blasted in her office. Evangeline burst into the kitchen, her linen blouse rumpled from the long drive, eyes wide with the news that had buzzed through her phone like angry hornets. "Lila, what happened?" "Mama's at the church, praying like the world's ending." She pulled her sister into a fierce hug, the scent of her citrus perfume cutting through the heaviness. Lila collapsed against her, the dam breaking in hot, silent tears. "She found the letters. Called me a disgrace. It's out now, Angie. Everyone knows." Evangeline held her tighter, her own heart twisting. She had suspected for years, the way Lila's eyes lit up at stories of far-off places, the secretive smiles after late-night calls. But suspicion and solidarity were different beasts. "You're not a disgrace," she murmured fiercely, stroking Lila's hair. "You're my sister. And we'll face this together." They sat at the scarred oak table, the one their father had carved from driftwood, sharing a bottle of last year's vintage as the stars pricked the velvet sky. Evangeline spoke of reason, of time healing wounds, but Lila saw the flicker of fear in her eyes, the fear of what this meant for the family vines, the fragile legacy they all shared. The next morning dawned merciless, the sun a accusatory eye. Lila ventured to the mercado for bread. Her chin lifted like a flag of defiance, but the stares followed her like shadows. Old Señor Ruiz, who had taught her to prune grapes as a girl, turned away without his usual gruff greeting. Women who once pinched her cheeks now crossed themselves furtively. And there by the fountain stood Tomas, her childhood friend turned suitor, his face twisted in betrayal. "How could you, Lila? After all we've been." He spat the words, but it was the pity in his eyes that stung worst, the pity of a village mourning a myth. Evangeline, sensing the storm from her office window in Malaga that afternoon, texted Lila encouragements laced with practicality. "Stay strong. Miriam's in town for a site visit tomorrow. Maybe she can help with the family account." Mariam Hale. The name alone evoked a mix of awe and intimidation. At 45, she was a force of nature transplanted from the vineyards of Napa Valley to the sun-drenched coasts of Spain, her consultancy bridging old-world traditions with new market savvy. Evangeline had idolized her from day one. The way Miriam commanded boardrooms with a quiet intensity, her voice carrying the lilt of California summers, her green eyes sharp as sheared emeralds. There was something magnetic about her, the silver threads in her auburn bob, the tailored blazers that hugged her athletic frame, the stories she shared over late-night strategy sessions of chasing sunsets in Sonoma and rebuilding after personal tempests. Lila had met her only once, at a vineyard tasting Evangeline hosted last harvest. Miriam had raised a glass to her saying, "To the roots that run deep, and the branches that dare to reach." Lila had blushed, feeling seen in a way that made her pulse quicken. Now with disgrace branded on her skin, that memory felt like a lifeline fraying in the wind. As the week wore on, the isolation deepened. Rosa refused to speak to Lila, sleeping in the front room with her Bible as a shield. The vineyard foreman, a distant cousin, hinted at adjustments to her shifts. Lila worked the rows anyway, her hands blistering on the shears, the earth her only confessor. Nights brought dreams of Jordan's arms, of Barcelona's rain-slicked streets, but waking brought the echo of her mother's words, disgrace. It was on the 8th day, during the village's annual Feria de la Vendimia, the harvest festival that turned Almeria into a riot of flamenco skirts and grilling sardines, that the fracture widened into a chasm. The plaza swelled with bodies, laughter mingling with the strum of guitars, lanterns swaying like fireflies against the deepening blue. Lila had planned to stay hidden, but Evangeline dragged her out, insisting, "You can't let them win by disappearing." Dressed in a simple white blouse and embroidered skirt, Lila wove through the crowd, the wine flowing freely, loosening tongues. Father Miguel, elevated on a makeshift stage for the blessing of the grapes, paused mid-prayer, his gaze landing on her like a spotlight. The microphone crackled to life. "We gather to celebrate God's bounty, but let us also pray for those among us who stray from his path, for the lost sheep who bring shame upon their flock." The crowd murmured, heads turning, fingers pointing. Tomas stepped forward, emboldened by the Rioja, his voice booming. Lila Vargas, you've defiled your family's name. Repent or leave this holy ground. The plaza hushed, the air thick with judgment. Lila's knees buckled, the world tilting as faces blurred into a sea of condemnation. Evangeline gripped her arm, whispering, "Don't move." But inside Lila shattered, disgrace indeed, a word that wrapped around her throat like thorns. Then cutting through the din like a blade, came a voice clear and unyielding. Enough. Miriam Hale strode into the plaza's heart, her presence parting the crowd like Moses at the sea. She had arrived that morning for the consultancy's annual audit of the Vargas vines, but the festival's chaos had drawn her out, Evangeline's frantic text, a plea wrapped in sisterly desperation, propelling her forward. At 45, Miriam moved with the assured grace of someone who had weathered boardroom battles and personal betrayals alike, her linen blazer unbuttoned against the evening warmth, auburn hair catching the lantern glow. Her green eyes, framed by faint laugh lines that spoke of joys reclaimed, scanned the scene with predatory calm. "Tomas," she said, her American accent rolling like distant thunder over the Spanish lilt. "If you're done playing vigilante, step aside. This isn't a bullring. It's a celebration." The crowd tittered nervously, but Tomas puffed his chest, undeterred. "You don't understand, Senora Hale. This is our way. Her perversion threatens everything." Miriam's laugh was low, disarming, a sound like wind through canyon oaks. She placed herself squarely between Lila and the stage, her hand finding Evangeline's shoulder first, then Lila's, a touch as steady as bedrock. "Your way? I've consulted for families from Rioja to Rias Baixas, and I've learned one truth. Traditions that crush spirits aren't traditions, they're chains." She turned to Father Miguel, her gaze softening but unyielding. "Father, your blessings are welcome, but not your condemnations. Not here. Not tonight." Lila stared up at her, breath caught in her chest, the world sharpening into hyperfocus. Miriam's profile was etched against the lanterns, strong jaw, the subtle curve of her neck, and in that moment Lila felt a spark, not of romance but of profound recognition. This woman, a stranger in many ways, saw her, not as disgrace but as whole. The priest faltered, microphone trembling in his grip, but the crowd's murmur swelled into a divide. Some nodding in agreement, others crossing arms tighter. Rosa Vargas pushed through from the edges, her face a mask of anguish, rosary dangling like a noose. "Miriam, you of all people defending this? You've poisoned my Evangeline with your modern nonsense from America. Now you poison my home." Miriam's eyes flickered with something raw, pain perhaps, or memory. She stepped forward, voice dropping to a timbre that carried intimate weight. "Rosa, I know the taste of shame. I came to Spain 15 years ago running from it. My own family in Napa calling me unnatural, when I chose to love a woman who made my world brighter. I lost friends, contracts, pieces of myself. But I rebuilt not by hiding but by standing." She glanced back at Lila, a silent vow in her eyes. "Your daughter isn't poison. She's the vintage that surprises, the one with notes of courage you never expected." Gasps rippled through the plaza. Tomas sneered. "Lies. You're one of them too." But Miriam didn't flinch. Proudly. "And if that offends your God, take it up with him, not with her." The words landed like stones in still water, ripples of shock widening. Evangeline squeezed Lila's hand, tears brimming, her composure cracking for the first time. Lila, numb moments before, felt warmth flood her veins, a defiant bloom against the chill of rejection. The festival teetered on a knife's edge. A young woman in the crowd, Inés, the baker's daughter, who had always shared shy smiles with Lila over loaves of pan de Almeria, clapped once, then again. Others joined, tentative at first, then bolder, the applause of fragile rebellion. Father Miguel lowered the mic, defeated, and the guitar struck up anew, flamenco's fiery rhythm reclaiming the night. But as the crowd dispersed into uneasy revelry, Rosa fixed Miriam with a gaze like daggers. "You've sown discord here, American. See if it bears fruit." Back at the Vargas finca, under the canopy of ancient grapevines, the sisters sat on the porch with Miriam, the air heavy with unspoken gratitudes. Evangeline poured glasses of their finest Tempranillo, her hands steadier now. "You didn't have to do that," she said, voice thick. "It could have cost you the account." Miriam waved it off, settling into a wicker chair with a sigh that spoke of long days. Evangeline, you're the best analyst I've got, sharp as a secateur blade. But this. She gestured to Lila, who sat curled like a fern frond, knees to chest. This was right. Sometimes the harvest demands we cut away the deadwood to let light in. Lila lifted her head, meeting those green eyes for the first time without the veil of fear. Why me? You barely know me. Miriam's smile was gentle, laced with the melancholy of shared scars. Because I see myself in you, at your age hiding letters from a lover named Elena, dreaming of escape. And because your sister, well, she's family to me now. In a way. Evangeline blushed, busying herself with the bottle, but the air hummed with undercurrents. Over the next days, as Miriam extended her stay to oversee the audit, the finca became a sanctuary of sorts. Mornings found Lila and Miriam walking the rows, discussing soil pitch and trellis designs, but the talk veered inevitably to deeper soils, the hearts. Miriam shared fragments of her life. The Napa ranch where she grew up, the coming out that shattered her engagement to a childhood sweetheart, the slow rebuild in Spain where she found not just business, but belonging. Love isn't a vineyard you can prune into submission, she said one dawn as mist clung to the leaves. It's wilder, and worth every risk. Lila opened in turn, her voice gaining strength with each confession. Jordan's letters were her talisman, read aloud under the arbor until the words lost their sting. Evangeline watched from afar, a knot of emotions tightening in her chest. Pride in her sister, gratitude to Miriam, and something sharper unnamed, when their hands brushed during a shared laugh. But harmony is fleeting in stories of the heart. The betrayal came swift as a sirocco wind, on a sweltering afternoon 2 weeks later. Lila had received a parcel from Barcelona, Jordan's latest sketches, wrapped in promises of a visit. Elation carried her through the vines, but as she returned to the finca, she overheard voices from the office. Rosa and Tomas, their tones low and venomous. We'll lose the consultancy if she stays, Tomas urged, his voice oily. Hale's influence, it's spreading. But if Lila leaves quietly, signs that non-disclosure Evangeline drew up last year for the family shares. We keep control. Rosa's reply was a whisper of steel. I spoke to Father Miguel. There's a clinic in Granada, conversion prayers, discretion. She goes or we cut her out. For the family's sake. Lila's world fractured. Her mother, plotting exile, erasure. And Evangeline's name invoked in the scheme? Betrayal's blade twisted deeper. She burst in, parcel clutched like a shield. Mama? Angie knew. Rosa paled, but Tomas smirked. It's mercy, Lila. Save your soul. The confrontation erupted, words flying like grape leaves in a gale. Lila fled to the hills, tears carving paths through the dust, her phone silent save for one text to Evangeline. Is it true? No reply came, the void a deeper wound than any shout. Evangeline, arriving home to the wreckage, confronted her mother in the kitchen, the air thick with the scent of cooling paella. The non-disclosure? You twisted my work for this. Rosa wept then, not with fury but defeat. I thought it would protect us all. Forgive me, hija. But Evangeline's forgiveness was a dam bursting. She raced to the hills, finding Lila perched on a rocky outcrop, the sea a distant shimmer. It wasn't me, she gasped, collapsing beside her. Tomas forged the intent. I'd never betray you. They clung together as the sun set, sisters reforged in fire. But the shadow lingered. Trust, once cracked, demands mending. Miriam found them there, her consultancy jeep rumbling to a halt below. She climbed silently, offering water and quiet. Betrayals cut deepest from kin, she said, settling on Lila's other side. But they don't define us. We choose our harvest. That night, under a canopy of stars, the three women talked until dawn, raw, unfiltered. Lila spoke of Jordan, the love that had sustained her. Evangeline of her own hidden yearnings, the pressure of perfection. Miriam of Elena, lost to illness years ago, the ghost that still whispered in her dreams. Bonds formed in the crucible, sisterly, mentor-like, and something tender unspoken between Lila and Miriam. A recognition that bloomed slow like late-ripening grapes. Yet conflict simmered. Tomas rallied the village elders, petitioning the co-op to oust the Vargas holding, citing moral decay. Rosa, racked with guilt, withdrew further, Her rosary clicks a metronome of remorse. Lila, emboldened, reached out to Jordan, the call a bridge across the miles. Come. See the vines. See me. The climax crested on the eve of the co-op vote. In the Finca's great hall where barrels loomed like silent judges. Villagers packed the space. Air thick with suspicion and the tang of fermenting must. Tomas presented his case, voice thundering. The Vargases harbor disgrace, let it taint no more. Murmurs rose, but Lila stood, flanked by Evangeline and Miriam, her voice steady as the Sierras. I've toiled these soils since I could walk, she said, eyes sweeping the room. My hands blister for this land, same as yours. My heart beats for it too. Not in shame but in truth. Love me or loathe me, but judge not my legacy. Miriam followed, her speech a masterclass in persuasion. Data on yields, projections on markets, woven with humanity. Strength isn't conformity, it's resilience. Lila embodies that. Honor her, or lose what makes Almeria thrive. The vote hung teetering. Ines rose, then others. Whispers turning to voices of support. Tomas's face darkened, but the tide shifted. Rosa from the shadows stepped forward last, her voice a tremor's whisper. She's my daughter. Flaws and all. Vote for us. The co-op's decision came at midnight. A narrow eye sealing the Vargas legacy intact. Cheers erupted, tentative then fervent, glasses clinking in a toast to survival. Lila stood amid the fray, Evangeline's arm around her waist, Miriam's hand lingering on her shoulder. A trinity of quiet triumph. But as the hall emptied, Rosa approached, her steps halting, eyes red-rimmed. Perdoname, Mija, she murmured, extending a trembling hand. Lila took it, the grip fierce, forgiveness not a word but a bridge rebuilt stroke by stroke. We're vines, Mama. Entwined even in storm. Tomas slunk away, his petition crumbled, but whispers lingered in the village alleys. Scars that time would fade, not erase. The days following bloomed with cautious renewal. Lila returned to the vines with renewed vigor, her shears singing through the canes, while Evangeline negotiated expansions with Miriam's firm, her confidence unshaken. Miriam, her audit complete, prepared to depart for Malaga, but not before Jordan's arrival, a whirlwind of New York energy landing in a rented Fiat sketchbook in tow. Jordan was all contrasts. 29, with a pixie cut of sun-bleached blonde and tattoos of crashing waves peeking from her tank top, her laugh a cascade that echoed off the Finca walls. She enveloped Lila in a hug that smelled of city rain and possibility, her eyes lighting on the groves with artist's wonder. This place. It's you, she said, pulling Lila toward the sunset cliffs. Their reunion was a gentle unfurling. Walks hand in hand along irrigation ditches, shared silences under pergolas heavy with blooms. No grand gestures, just the steady reaffirmation of roots intertwined across distances. Yet in the quiet hours Lila felt a pull elsewhere. Miriam's departure loomed, her presence a gravitational force, conversations that stretched into philosophy, shared glances over dinner that held the weight of unspoken histories. One evening as fireflies danced in the courtyard, Miriam found Lila alone by the fountain, Jordan off sketching by moonlight. You'll miss her fire, Miriam observed, settling on the stone rim, her voice soft as the splashing water. Lila nodded, tracing patterns in the ripples. I will. But you've given me something else. Sight. To see myself without the shadows. Their eyes met, and in that suspended breath the air thickened, not with urgency but with a profound tenderness, the kind that honors space even as it yearns. Miriam reached out, tucking a curl behind Lila's ear, her touch lingering. And you've reminded me that healing isn't solitary. Thank you, Lila. Evangeline watched from the porch, a smile playing on her lips, her own heart lighter. The betrayal's echo had forged deeper trust. She confided in Miriam that week, over coffee in the sun-dappled kitchen, of pressures long buried. You've been more than a boss, she admitted, voice catching. A guide. Miriam's response was a warm hand over hers, eyes crinkling. And you've been the spark that keeps me returning to Spain. Family Evangeline chosen, not born. Rosa's thawing was slower, a petal unfurling to light. She joined Lila in the kitchen one dawn. Hands kneading dough for tortoise, silence companionable at first. I was afraid, she confessed finally, flour dusting her apron, of losing you to a world that doesn't bend. Lila paused, meeting her gaze. The world bends, Mama. Slowly. But love? It endures. They baked together after that, the oven's warmth a metaphor for mending. Small acts stacking like cordwood against the cold. Jordan stayed a fortnight, her sketches capturing Almuria's soul. Gnarled vines under azure skies, Lila's profile against the sea. Even a tender portrait of Rosa at prayer, rosary in hand, face softened by grace. This place heals, Jordan said on her last night. As they picnicked under the stars, the family gathered. Evangeline recounting co-op triumphs, Miriam sharing Napa tales, laughter weaving through the chill. But as Jordan boarded her flight back to Barcelona, promising monthly visits, Lila felt the ache of partings, sweetened by permanence. Miriam's goodbye came at the finca gate, her jeep idling, Evangeline hovering with manifests for the next project. She pulled Lila into an embrace, firm and lingering, whispering, "Write to me." Not letters hidden but truths shared. Lila nodded, throat tight. Always. As Miriam drove away, dust swirling in her wake, Lila touched the spot on her cheek where lips had brushed. Not a kiss of passion but of profound affirmation. It was enough for now. Months turned like seasons, the vines heavy with autumn promise. Lila's truth rippled outward. Ines invited her to the women's sewing circle, where stories of hidden loves emerged like threads pulled free. The Mercado whispers softened to nods, then conversations. Evangeline, buoyed by a promotion under Miriam's wing, began exploring her own edges. Weekend trips to Granada, journals filled with uncharted dreams. Winter brought rains that swelled the rivers, washing clean the parched earth. Lila and Miriam corresponded, emails evolving to calls, voices bridging the miles with ease. "Come to Napa," Miriam urged one stormy night, thunder rumbling like applause. "See where I learned to stand." Lila hesitated, Jordan's visits a steady rhythm, but the invitation tugged. A new horizon. Spring unfurled in riotous color, the feria returning with guarded joy. This time Lila danced, flamenco steps fierce and free, Evangeline partnering her with sisterly flair, the crowd cheering without caveat. Father Miguel offered a blessing inclusive, his sermon on vines and variety a quiet concession. Rosa watched from the sidelines, pride etching new lines on her face, her rosary now a talisman of peace. The story's true crescendo came unannounced, in a letter from Miriam. "I've sold the consultancy shares. Time for roots of my own. Almeria if you'll have me." She arrived in May, bags unpacked in a rented casita overlooking the groves, her presence a gentle integration, consulting remotely, joining vineyard walks, her laughter blending with the village cadence. Lila and Miriam grew close, their bond a slow waltz. Shared sunrises over coffee, debates on poetry by Borges and Neruda, hands brushing in the dirt as they planted new rows. It was romance in its purest form. Human layered, born of mutual resurrection. Jordan understood, her blessing a sketch sent from afar. Two women amid vines, entwined yet reaching skyward. One golden evening as the sun dipped into the Mediterranean, Lila led Miriam to the outcrop where betrayal had once broken her. "Here," she said, spreading a blanket, wine poured from the family's latest vintage. "Where you found me." Miriam smiled, pulling her close, their foreheads touching. "And here where we begin." Evangeline, ever the weaver, hosted a family feast that harvest, the table groaning under platters of jamon and aioli, stories flowing freer than the Rio. Rosa raised a glass, voice steady. "To disgraces redeemed, to loves that endure." Laughter followed, tears of release, the air alive with possibility. In Almuria's embrace, rugged, sun-kissed, unyielding yet forgiving, Lila learned that disgrace is but a shadow, fleeting before the light of truth. Her heart, once coiled in fear, now sprawled like vines across the hills. Wild, resilient, bearing fruit in abundance. And in the quiet moments, with Miriam's hand in hers, Evangeline's laugh across the way, she knew grace not as absolution, but as the simple, profound act of being seen, loved, whole.